Alien protest. You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done? Part 1. The capture. The colony ship Horizon's Dawn moved slowly through the empty space between stars. It was a big ship, almost 2 kilometers long, carrying 3,000 human colonists to a new world. Most of them were sleeping in special pods that kept them frozen and dreaming. But not everyone was asleep. 200 crew members worked to keep the ship running. And there were the children. 40-7 children lived on the ship, in a special section called the Garden Ring. Their parents worked different jobs on the ship. So the children stayed together, learning and playing while their families kept everyone safe. It was a good life. The Garden Ring had trees and grass and a small stream that recycled water through the ship. The children thought of it as their own little world. Hannah was 10 years old. She had long black hair that her mother always tied in 2 braids. Her mother, Yuna, was the ship's ambassador. This meant Yuna talked to aliens when the ship met them. Most aliens were friendly. Some wanted to trade. A few were dangerous. Yuna's job was to know the difference. On the morning everything changed, Hannah was sitting by the stream with her friends. Dohan, who was 12 and the oldest of the children, was teaching the younger ones how to fold paper into birds. The twins, Yuri and Nari, who were 9, were arguing about whose bird looked better. Little Taiho, only 5 years old, was trying to make his paper bird swim in the water. Paper doesn't swim, Dohan told him gently. It just gets wet and sinks. But I want it to swim, Taiho said. His lower lip stuck out. Hana laughed and picked up the wet paper. We can make you a boat instead. Boats float. This was how life was supposed to be. Simple, safe, happy. Then the alarm started screaming. The sound was so loud that Taiho covered his ears and started crying. The other children looked around with wide eyes. They had practiced emergency drills before, but this sound was different. This was the real alarm, the one that meant danger. Teacher Minji came running into the Garden Ring. She was young, only 25, but she was responsible for all the children when their parents worked. Her face was white with fear. Everyone, come with me now, she said. Her voice was shaking. We need to go to the safe room. What's happening? Doan asked. He was already gathering the younger children, pushing them toward Minji. Ships, Minji said. Alien ships. They're not friendly. The children moved fast. They had trained for this. But training was different from the real thing. In training, nobody cried. In training, nobody's hands shook. Now, everyone was scared. They were halfway to the safe room when the ship shook hard. Something had hit them. The lights flickered and some of the children fell down. Hannah grabbed Taiho before he could hit the floor. Keep moving. Minji shouted. They reached the safe room. It was a small space with thick walls, designed to protect them from radiation or hull breaches. Minji pushed all the children inside and was about to close the door when she stopped. Sujin and Minho, she said. Where are Sujin and Minho? Hannah felt her stomach drop. Sujin was 8. Minho was her younger brother, only 6. They had been playing in the far corner of the Garden Ring. I'll get them, Minji said. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone except me or your parents. She ran. The children waited. Minutes passed. The ship shook again and again. They could hear strange sounds through the walls. Sounds that didn't belong on their ship. Footsteps that were too heavy. Voices that were too deep. Duhan stood by the door. His hands were fists at his sides. If anyone tries to come in, I'll fight them. You're 12, Yuri said. What can you do? Something, Dohan said. Anything. The door opened. It was not Minji. It was not their parents. The creature that stood in the doorway was tall. almost 3 meters. Its skin was dark purple, like a bruise. It had 4 arms and a face that looked like someone had pushed a lizard and a spire together. Its eyes were black and shiny, like whetstones. Behind it stood more of the creatures. They wore armor and carried weapons that glowed with blue light. The children screamed. The creature made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then it spoke in a language that the children's translators turned into words they could understand. Small humans, it said. Valuable. Oh, take them all. Dawn tried to fight. He really did. He kicked and punched and bit. But he was 12 years old, and the creature was a warrior from a species that had conquered dozens of worlds. One of its 4 arms grabbed Dawn and lifted him like he weighed nothing. This one has spirit, the creature said. Good. Spirited ones sell for more. The children were dragged from the safe room. As they moved through the corridors, Hana saw things that would stay in her nightmares forever. Some of the crew members were lying on the floor, not moving. Others were being pushed into groups by more of the purple aliens. She saw her mother's assistant, a man named Junsu, with blood running down his face. The children! He shouted when he saw them. No, not the children. Take me instead. One of the aliens hit him, and he fell silent. They were taken to the cargo bay. It was a huge room where the ship stored supplies. But all the supplies had been pushed to the sides. In the middle of the room, the aliens had set up cages. Metal cages with bars that hummed with energy. Hana saw other children already in the cages. Sujin and Minho were there. Sujin was holding her brother tight, her face wet with tears. And there were adults too, but they were being separated, put in different cages far away from the children. Young ones here, an alien said, pushing Hana toward one of the cages. Adults there. Keep them apart. Easier to control. Hana was thrown into a cage with 15 other children. Daohong came next, then the twins, then little Taiho. One by one, all 47 children were locked behind the glowing bars. From across the cargo bay, Hana could see her mother. Yuna was in a cage with other adults. Her face was bruised and her clothes were torn, but she was alive. When she saw Hana, she pressed herself against the bars of her cage. Hana! She screamed. Hana, be brave. I'm going to get you out. I promise. But even as she said it, aliens were moving between them, blocking her view. Laughing at her tears, a new alien entered the cargo bay. This one was different from the others. Its armor was more decorated. It walked like it owned everything. The other aliens stepped aside and lowered their heads when it passed. This was Commander Tova. Report, Tova said. 3,000 humans in stasis pods, one of the warriors said. 200 awake crew members. 47 young ones. The warrior paused. The young ones are especially valuable, Commander. Human children are rare in the markets. Tova walked to the cage where the children were held. It looked at them with its black eyes. Hana wanted to look away, but she forced herself to meet its gaze. 47, Tova said slowly. Yes, these will make us rich. Human children are exotic. Collectors will pay fortunes. Commander, another voice said. This voice was different. It came from a smaller alien, one with pale blue skin and too many eyes. I must advise caution. My species has dealt with humans before. They are protective of their young. All species protect their young, Tova said. It means nothing. Humans are different, the blue alien insisted. They have a word for it. They call it love. It makes them do irrational things. Dangerous things. Tova made that laughing sound again. Love, a word for weakness. Humans are small, fragile. They live barely 100 years. What can they do against the Velhari Empire? The blue alien said nothing. But its many eyes looked at the children with something that might have been fear. Tova turned to its warriors. "Put the children in Cargo Bay 7. Reinforce the room. I want guards at all times. These are worth more than everything else on this ship combined." The children were moved. Cargo Bay 7 was smaller than the main cargo bay. It had no windows, only cold metal walls. The cages were placed in rows, and the doors were locked with codes that blinked red in the darkness. Before they closed the last door, Hannah saw her mother one more time. Yuna was being held back by 2 aliens, but she was still fighting to get free. "I'll find you," Yuna screamed. "I'll come for you, no matter what. I love you, Hannah." Then the door closed in the darkness of Cargo Bay 7. Surrounded by crying children, Hannah made a promise to herself. She would not just wait to be saved. She would find a way out. She would help her mother. She would make these aliens understand that taking human children was the biggest mistake of their lives. She didn't know how yet. She was only 10 years old. But humans were good at one thing above all else, surviving in the cage next to hers. Dahan was already watching the guards. His eyes were not afraid anymore. They were calculating. "The guards change every 4 hours, he whispered to Hannah. "There are 8 of them total. They take 2 breaks during each shift." Hannah nodded. "I'm counting the seconds between their walks. 37 seconds from one end of the room to the other." In another cage, the twins Yuri and Nari were already making plans of their own. "The bars have electricity," Yuri said quietly, "but it stops when they bring food. They have to turn it off to open the doors." "That's when we move," Nari agreed. Even little Taiho had stopped crying. He was looking at the ventilation grate in the ceiling. It was small. Too small for an adult. Too small even for most children, but not too small for a 5-year-old. The Velhari had made a mistake. They thought they had captured 47 helpless children. They had actually captured 47 survivors and human alien. Protest. "You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done?" Part 2. The warning ignored. The Galactic Council station floated in the empty space between 3 star systems. It was neutral ground, a place where all species could meet and talk without fighting. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of worlds lived and worked there. It was the center of galactic civilization. Mira had worked at the station for 15 years. She was a council representative, which meant she helped solve problems between species. She had seen wars start and end. She had watched empires rise and fall. She thought she had seen everything. Then she received a message about the horizon's dawn. She was in her office when her computer made the urgent sound. The message was from a human ship that had been nearby when the attack happened. They had watched from far away, too small and weak to help. All they could do was report what they saw. Myra read the message 3 times. Each time, her hearts beat faster. Yes, hearts. Myra was not human. She belonged to a species called the Tarani. They had 3 hearts and blue skin and too many eyes to count. They also had very, very good memories. Mira remembered everything she had learned about humans in the last 50 years. She remembered the stories, the history, the warnings. "No," she whispered to herself. "No, no, no." She ran to the communication center. Her many eyes were wide with fear. The workers there had never seen her so scared. "I need to contact the Volhari raider ship immediately," she said. "The one that attacked the human colony vessel." Representative Myra, one of the workers, said, "The Volhari don't answer council calls. They don't recognize our authority." "They'll answer this one," Myra said. "Tell them the Galactic Council demands to speak with their commander. Tell them it's about the human children." It took 2 hours, but finally, the Velhari responded. Commander Tova's face appeared on the screen. It looked amused. "A council representative," Tova said. How nice. Have you called to congratulate me on my successful raid? I've called to beg you to release the human children, Myra said. Tova's black eyes blinked. Beg? A council representative begging? This is unusual. Commander Tova, I know the Valhari don't respect the council. I know you don't care about our laws. But I'm not talking about laws right now. I'm talking about survival. Your survival. Tova leaned back in its chair. This should be entertaining. Please, explain how capturing a few dozen weak little creatures threatens my survival. Myra took a deep breath. Do you know what humans call their children? Young? Offspring? It doesn't matter. They call them their future, Myra said. Their hope. Their reason for living. Humans are different from other species, Commander. When you threaten their children, you don't just threaten them. You threaten everything they are. Tova made its laughing sound. All species love their young. This is not new. Humans are different, Myra insisted. I've studied them for decades. I was there when they first made contact with the galaxy. I've watched them grow from a small, primitive species to one of the most important civilizations in this sector. Do you know what drove that growth, Commander? Do you know what made them expand faster than any species in recorded history? Technology? Luck? Protection, Myra said. They spread across the galaxy because they wanted to protect their children. They built ships because they wanted to give their children new worlds. They developed weapons because they wanted to keep their children safe. Everything they do, everything they are, comes from one simple instinct: protect the young. Tova's amusement seemed to fade slightly, but it still didn't understand. You're saying humans are protective parents, so are the Kalthari. So are the demon beasts of Sector 9. We've captured their young before and sold them without problems. Myra's many eyes focused on the screen. Commander, let me tell you a story. 30 years ago, a group of pirates kidnapped a human child from a trading station. One child. Just one. The parents were simple merchants with a small ship. They had no weapons, no military training, no allies. Do you know what happened? They paid the ransom, I assume. They didn't pay anything, Myra said. Instead, the father flew his ship directly into the pirate base. He crashed through the walls at full speed. The explosion killed everyone inside except, somehow, the child. The child survived because the father had built a special protective case around where the child was being held. He knew exactly where his daughter was because he had spent 3 weeks tracking the pirates across 4 star systems. He died to save her, and he took 47 pirates with him. Tova was quiet for a moment. One human. An isolated incident. It's not isolated, Myra said. It's the pattern. 23 years ago, slavers took 12 human children from a colony. The humans didn't ask for help. They didn't negotiate. They built a fleet of combat ships in 6 months and hunted the slavers for 3 years. They didn't stop until they had rescued every single child and destroyed every single slaver ship. Every single one. The Valhari are not pirates or slavers, Tova said. We are an empire. 18 years ago, the Draxon Collective tried to use human children as hostages during a war. The Draxon Collective had 400 warships. The humans had 200. The humans won. They didn't just win. They burned the Draxon homeworld. They reduced every military base to ash. They hunted Draxon ships for 5 more years after the war officially ended. The Draxon Collective doesn't exist anymore, Commander. Billions of Draxon are dead. Why? Because they touched human children. Tova's forearms were very still now. 10 years ago, Mira continued, a single Valhari raider captured 1 human family. 1 family with 3 children. Your empire released them within a week. Do you remember why? Tova didn't answer. Because human ships started appearing at the edges of your space. Not 100 ships, not 1,000. 10,000 human ships, all moving toward your territory. They weren't from one government. They were from everywhere. Colonies, stations, corporate fleets, military vessels, even civilian transport ships. 10,000 ships, all coming for 3 children. Your emperor personally ordered the family released. He said it was a diplomatic gesture. We both know he was afraid. The silence stretched between them. Commander Tova, Mira said, you have 47 human children. 47. Do you understand what that means? You haven't captured cargo. You haven't taken hostages. You've declared war on the entire human species. Not a war of politics or territory. A war of existence. Because that's how humans will see it. Tova's voice was quieter now. The humans don't know where we are. Their ship's distress signal was blocked. It doesn't matter, Myra said. They'll find you. They always find their children. I've seen it happen again and again. They have a word for it. Obsession. When their children are in danger, humans become obsessed. They don't eat. They don't sleep. They don't stop. They use every resource, call every friend, chase every lead. It could take days or weeks or months, but they will find you. And when they do, I have a warship. They have a colony vessel. Myra almost laughed. You think one colony ship is all you're facing? Commander, the moment word gets out that you have human children, every human in this sector will come for you. Parents will leave their jobs. Soldiers will volunteer for suicide missions. Ships will fly into battle without shields, if that's what it takes. You will face an army of beings who have nothing to lose because you've already taken the only thing they value. You're trying to scare me, Tova said. But its voice had lost its confidence. I'm trying to save you, Myra said. Release the children. Return them to the human ship. Apologize. Leave this sector and never come back. If you do this now, today, you might survive. But every hour you wait makes it worse. Every hour gives the humans more time to organize. More time to gather ships. More time to plan your destruction. Tova was quiet for a long time. Mira could see it thinking. She hoped she had gotten through. You make a compelling argument, Representative. Tova finally said. But I think you overestimate the humans. They're soft. Emotional. Those are weaknesses, not strengths. Their emotions are what make them dangerous. Enough. Tova's voice was hard again. I've listened to your stories. I've heard your warnings. But I am a commander of the Velhari Empire. I do not run from small, weak creatures who can barely live 100 years. The children will be sold. The profits will make me wealthy. And if the humans come? Tova's mouth twisted into a smile. Then they will learn why the Velhari are feared across 30 systems. The connection ended. Mira stood in the communication center, her many eyes wet with tears she couldn't explain. The workers around her were staring. Representative? One of them asked. What do we do now? Mira thought about the 47 children in Velhari cages. She thought about the parents who would be waking up soon, learning that their children were gone. She thought about what would happen next. We warn everyone to stay out of the way, she said quietly. And we start counting. Counting what? The dead, Myra said. The Velhari don't know it yet, but they're already dead. All of them. Every single one who touched those children is already dead. They just haven't stopped moving yet. She walked back to her office. There was nothing more she could do. Shiha. Alien protest. You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done? Part 3. Day 3, 3 days. It had been 3 days since the children were locked in Cargo Bay 7. 3 days of cold metal floors and glowing cage bars. 3 days of food that tasted like paste and water that smelled strange. 3 days of fear and darkness and guards who laughed when children cried. But 3 days was also enough time to learn Datuhan had not wasted a single minute. He was 12 years old, but he had the mind of a general. His father was a military officer back on Earth. His mother was an engineer. Together, they had raised a son who knew how to watch, how to wait, and how to plan. 8 guards total, he whispered to the children around him. It was the middle of the night cycle, when the lights went dim and the guards were tired. 4 on duty at a time. They change every 4 hours. During the change, there are 30 seconds when only 2 guards are watching the whole room. Hannah nodded. She had been counting too. The guard who brings food is different. He's alone. He has to turn off the electricity on the cage bars to open the doors. That's our moment, Dawn said. That's when we can touch the bars without getting hurt. In the cage next to them, the twins Yuri and Nari had their own information to share. The twins were 9 years old and identical. They had the same face, the same eyes, the same quick way of thinking. The guards couldn't tell them apart, which made it easy for them to move between cages during head counts. We've mapped the room, Yuri said. There's 1 door to the corridor, 2 ventilation grates in the ceiling, an emergency hatch in the floor, but it's welded shut. The ventilation grates are small, Nari added. Too small for most of us. Every eye turned to Tejo. The 5-year-old was asleep, curled up against Hana's side. He was so small, so innocent. He should have been at home, playing with toys and watching cartoons. Instead, he was here, in a cage, surrounded by aliens who wanted to sell him like property. It's too dangerous, one of the older children, a boy named Ji-hoon, said. He was 11 and had been crying quietly for most of the 3 days. If they catch him, they'll hurt him. They'll hurt all of us. If we do nothing, they'll sell us, Dohon said. His voice was not angry, just firm. They'll separate us. We'll never see our families again. Some of us will end up as pets for rich aliens. Some of us will end up as servants. Some of us might end up dead. The words hung in the cold air. Nobody spoke. I'm not saying we send Taiho into danger alone, Dahong continued. I'm saying we use every advantage we have. We're small. That's not just a weakness. It's a strength. We can fit places adults can't. We can be quiet when we need to be. We can work together in ways the Velhari don't expect. Hana looked down at the sleeping Taiho. She thought about her mother, locked in another part of the ship. She thought about the promise she had made to herself on the first day. She thought about what it meant to be human. Taiho is smart, she said quietly. He's braver than he looks. But we can't ask him to do anything. He has to volunteer. The children agreed. They would wait until Taiho woke up. They would explain the plan. They would let him decide. When morning came, the guards brought food. The paste was gray and tasteless, but the children ate it anyway. They needed their strength. While they ate, Hannah sat with Taiho and spoke to him in quiet words. Taiho, do you know what's happening? The little boy nodded. His eyes were serious in a way no 5-year-old's eyes should be. The bad aliens took us. They want to sell us. That's right. We want to stop them. We want to escape and save everyone. But we need help. What kind of help? Hannah pointed at the ventilation grate in the ceiling. We need someone small to crawl through there. Someone who can fit in the tiny spaces. Someone brave. Taiho looked at the grate. He looked at his own small hands. He looked at Hana. Will it be scary? He asked. Yes, Hana said honestly. It will be very scary. But you won't be alone. We'll be right here, cheering for you. And if you do this, you'll be a hero. A real hero, like in the stories. Taiho thought about this for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said. I'll do it. For you. For everyone. Hannah hugged him tight. She had to force herself not to cry. This was too much to ask of a child. It was too much to ask of anyone. But they had no choice. They were humans, and humans did what they had to do to survive. The plan came together piece by piece. First, they needed to get Taiho out of the cage. This meant waiting for the food delivery when the electricity was off. The door would only be open for about 20 seconds. They had to move fast. Second, Taiho had to reach the ventilation grate. It was 3 meters above the floor. The children would have to build a human ladder, lifting Taiho up while hiding him from the guard's view. Third, Taiho had to crawl through the vents until he found something useful. Maybe a way out. Maybe a communication terminal. Maybe just information about where they were and where the ship was going. It was a terrible plan. So many things could go wrong. But it was the only plan they had. Day 4 began with the sound of guards arguing. The children pretended to be asleep, but they listened carefully. "The commander says we reach the trading post in 6 days," one guard said. "These creatures will bring us fortune." "They're too quiet," the other guard said. "Human young are supposed to be noisy, difficult. These ones just sit there. Be grateful." "Would you rather they scream and cry?" "I'd rather they act normal. Their silence makes me nervous." The first guard laughed. "They're children. Small, weak, helpless. What could they possibly do?" If the guard had looked into the cages at that moment, he would have seen 47 pairs of eyes watching him, calculating, planning. The food delivery came at midday. A single guard entered with a cart of paste containers. He pressed a button on his wrist, and the electricity in the cage bars turned off with a soft hum. "Line up," he ordered. "One at a time. Take your food and go back." The children obeyed. They had practiced this over the last 2 days, making sure the guards saw them as quiet and obedient. Easy to control. Not a threat. Hana was near the front of the line. When she took her food, she stumbled. The container fell from her hands and splattered gray paste across the floor. "Stupid creature," the guard shouted. "Clean it up." "I'm sorry," Hana said, bending down. "I'm so sorry. I'll clean it. Please don't hurt me." The guard's attention was on Hana. So was the attention of the other guards at the door. Nobody was looking at the back of the cage. In those precious seconds, the children moved. Dawn hoisted Sujin onto his shoulders. Sujin reached up and grabbed Jihoon, who had been lifted by 2 other children. The human ladder formed in silence, body on top of body. Reaching toward the ceiling. At the top, Minho lifted Taeho. The little boy stretched his arms up, his fingers touching the edge of the ventilation grate. "I can't reach," Taeho whispered desperately. Below, the children stretched higher, muscles strained. Someone's foot slipped. They caught each other, balanced, held on. Taeho jumped. His small hands caught the edge of the grate. For one terrifying moment, he hung there, his legs kicking in the air. Then, with strength no one knew he had, he pulled himself up and into the vent. He disappeared into the darkness. The human ladder collapsed. Children falling onto children, just as the guard turned around. What was that noise? The guard demanded. "We fell," Dawn said quickly. "We're sorry. We were trying to make a game. We won't do it again." The guard looked at them suspiciously. He counted the children. Once, twice. He frowned. "There should be 47, he said. Hana's heart stopped, but then the twins moved. Yuri and Nari had positioned themselves in different corners of the cage. When the guard counted from one side, he counted both of them. When he counted from the other side, he counted both again. 40-7. "I must have miscounted," the guard muttered. He shook his head and went back to distributing food. In the ventilation system, Taeho crawled through the darkness. The vent was small and tight. The metal was cold against his hands and knees. He couldn't see anything. He could only feel his way forward, inch by inch, trying not to make any sound. He was terrified. He wanted his mother. He wanted to go home. He wanted to be anywhere but here, but Hannah was counting on him. All the children were counting on him. He was a hero now. Heroes didn't give up. He crawled. The vent branched in different directions. Taiho didn't know which way to go. He chose based on instinct, following the paths that felt right. Sometimes he heard voices below him. Sometimes he heard machinery humming. He kept going. After what felt like hours, he saw a light dot. It came from a grate below him. He crawled toward it and looked down. He was above a small room. Inside, he could see a Vilhari working at a computer. The screen showed maps and numbers and words Taiho couldn't understand. But he recognized one thing, a picture of the horizon's dawn, with dots showing where it was and where it was going. Taiho memorized everything he saw. The shapes, the colors, the direction of the arrows. He didn't understand what it all meant, but the older children would. He kept moving. The next grade showed a storage room. Boxes everywhere. Some of them had symbols on them that looked like warnings. The next grade showed an empty corridor. The next grade showed a room with cages. Taiho stopped in the cages. He could see adults. Human adults. Some of them were sleeping. Some of them were talking quietly. One of them was a woman with long dark hair, sitting alone in the corner. Hannah's mother. Taiho wanted to call out to her. He wanted to tell her that alien protest. You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done? Part 4. The uprising commander Tova was angry. No, angry was too small a word. Tova was furious in a way that made the other Velhari step back in fear. Explain to me, Tova said, each word like ice. How a creature the size of my foot escaped from a locked cage and walked through half my ship. The guards stood at attention, their bodies stiff with terror. Nobody wanted to answer. Nobody wanted to be the focus of Tova's rage. It used a ventilation system, one guard finally said. The grates are too small for adults. We didn't think about children. You didn't think. Tova repeated the words slowly. You didn't think that creatures small enough to fit in ventilation shafts might use them? This is the level of intelligence I command. The guard who had spoken lowered his head and said nothing more. Tova walked to the center of the command room. On the screens around it, alarm signals were still flashing. The emergency beacon had sent a signal for almost 30 seconds before they managed to shut it down. 30 seconds. Enough time for the message to travel millions of kilometers. Where did the signal reach? Tova demanded. A communication officer checked the data. Unknown, Commander. The signal was sent on an open channel. Anyone within range could have received it. How many ships are within range? Impossible to say. Our sensors show at least 12 vessels in the sector. Most are merchant ships. 2 are human. Tova's eyes narrowed. 2 human ships. They would have heard the signal. They would know that human children were in danger. They would already be calling for help. And what of the child who did this? Another guard brought Taiho forward. The little boy was bound with energy cuffs that were much too big for his small wrists. His face was dirty and his clothes were torn from crawling through the vents. But his eyes were not afraid. They were defiant. Tova bent down to look at the child. You've caused me a great deal of trouble, small one. Taiho said nothing. Nothing to say? No tears? No begging? Still nothing. The 5-year-old just stared at the alien commander with eyes that seemed too old for his face. Tova made a sound of disgust and stood up. Put him back with the others. And seal all the ventilation grates. I want guards watching those cages every second. No one sleeps. No one looks away. The next creature who tries to escape will be made an example. The guards dragged Taiho away. In Cargo Bay 7, the children had heard the alarms. They had seen the guards running and shouting. They knew something had happened. but they didn't know what. When the door opened and Taiho was thrown inside, Hana's heart broke. The little boy landed hard on the metal floor. The energy cuffs were still around his wrists, glowing faintly. He didn't cry. He didn't make any sound at all. He just lay there for a moment, then slowly pushed himself up. Taiho. Hana ran to him, pressing herself against the cage bars. "Are you okay?" "What happened?" Taiho looked at her. And then, incredibly, he smiled. "I did it," he said. "I sent the signal. Help is coming." The children stared at him. For a moment, nobody could speak. Then Doan let out a laugh that was half sob. "You beautiful, brave boy," Dahan said. "You actually did it." A guard hit the cage bars with his weapon. "Quiet. No talking." The children fell silent, but their eyes spoke for them. Hope, relief, pride. Little Taiho had done the impossible. He had reached the communication room. He had sent a distress signal. Somewhere out there, humans knew they were in trouble, but they weren't safe yet. Commander Tova ordered a change in course. Instead of heading to the trading post in 6 days, the ship would now go to a secret location where they could hide until the danger passed. This meant a longer journey. More time for things to go wrong. It also meant more time for the children to plan. Over the next 24 hours, the children worked in secret. They couldn't use the ventilation system anymore since it was sealed. They couldn't overpower the guards since they were too small and weak. But they could do something else. They could break the ship. It started with small things. During meal times, children would accidentally spill food on the guards' uniforms. In the night cycle, they would take turns making noises, keeping the guards awake and irritated. They cried, they screamed, they refused to eat. Every act of defiance was small on its own, but together they were exhausting. What is wrong with these creatures? One guard complained after his 3rd straight shift without sleep. They never stop. But this was just the distraction. The real work was happening in the corners of the cages, hidden from view. Sujin, the 8-year-old, had found a loose panel in the floor of her cage. Behind it was a bundle of wires. She didn't know what the wires did, but she remembered something her father had taught her. Every system has weak points. Find the weak points and you can break the system. She pulled out one wire. Nothing happened. She pulled out another. Still nothing. She pulled out a third, and the lights in one corner of the cargo bay flickered. The guards looked around nervously, but didn't find anything. The lights steadied. They went back to their posts. Sujin smiled. In another cage, Jihoon had stopped crying. The 11-year-old had found a new purpose. He was making a list of everything he observed about the guards. Their routines, their habits, their weaknesses. The tall one with the scar has trouble with his left arm, he whispered to Dawn. I think it's an old injury. He's slower when he reaches for things on that side. Good, Dawn said. Keep watching. Everything helps. The twins, Yuri and Nari, had discovered something important about the cage locks. They were electronic, controlled by a central computer. If something happened to the computer, the locks might fail. How do we reach the computer? Yuri asked. We don't have to, Nari said. We just have to overload the system. Too many errors at once. The computer crashes, the locks reset to default. What's the default? Open. It was a crazy plan. It required timing, coordination, and a lot of luck. But the children had nothing else. They had only themselves and their determination. Day 7 began with chaos. At exactly the same moment. In every cage, children started pulling wires. They had found loose panels, damaged spots, anything that gave them access to the ship's systems. They pulled and ripped and broke whatever they could reach. The lights flickered, then went out. The guards shouted in the darkness. Emergency lights came on, painting everything in red. In cage 12, Minho found the wire that controlled life support fans. He disconnected it. Within minutes, the air in Cargo Bay 7 started to feel thick and stale. In Cage 7, a girl named Yoonji pulled a bundle of cables that turned out to control the gravity plating in one corner of the room. The floor there suddenly became slippery, and 3 guards fell over. In Cage 3, Dohan found something better. A wire that, when pulled, sent a spark into the cage's electronic lock. The lock clicked once, twice, then popped open. "The cage is open," Dohan breathed. "Our cage is actually open." He didn't run out immediately. That would be stupid. The guards would catch him in seconds. Instead, he waited. He watched. The Velhari were running everywhere, trying to figure out what was happening. Half the systems in the cargo bay were malfunctioning. The doors to the corridor kept opening and closing on their own. The temperature was dropping. Frost was starting to form on the cage bars. "Commander!" A guard shouted into his communicator. "The cargo bay is going crazy. All systems are failing. Contain it." Tova's voice came back, angry and stressed. "I don't care what it takes. Those children are worth millions." But containing it was easier said than done. The children had found something the Velhari had never expected. The ship systems were connected in ways even the engineers didn't fully understand. Pull one wire and 3 other things broke. Break a circuit and half the ship sensors went blind. It was chaos. Beautiful, wonderful chaos. Hannah found her moment. With the guards distracted, she pushed on her cage door. The lock had been weakened by the electrical problems. It didn't open, but it bent. She pushed harder. The metal groaned. "Help me," she gasped to the children in her cage. Together, they pushed. 20 small bodies, all pressing against the door. The lock bent further. Further. It broke. The door swung open. Hannah was free. She ran, not toward the corridor, but toward the ventilation grate on the far wall. The grate had been sealed with metal plates, but the plates were held by screws. Screws that she could work at with her fingers. "Cover me," she said to Dohan, who had joined her. Dohan and 3 other children formed a wall between Hannah and the guards. The guards were still too busy with the system failures to notice a few children out of their cages. There were 47 children and only 8 guards. In the chaos, it was hard to keep track of everyone. Hannah worked at the screws. One came loose. Then another. Behind her, she heard shouting. A guard had noticed something. He was pointing at Dohan. "Some of them are out. Some of the humans are out." The guard ran toward them. Dohan didn't run. Instead, he picked up a loose piece of metal from the floor and threw it at the guard's feet. The guard stumbled. It was enough. The last screw came loose. The plate fell away. The ventilation grate was exposed. "Tai-ho!" Hannah shouted. "Go! Go now!" The little boy was already running. He squeezed past the others and jumped into Hannah's arms. She lifted him up to the grate. "Do you remember the way to the communication room?" Her daughter. Alien protest. "You caged human children? Do you even understand what you've done?" Part 5. Become the first ship appeared on the Velhari sensors at exactly 0600 hours. It was a small ship, the kind humans called corvette, fast and lightly armed. It didn't attack. It just sat there at the edge of sensor range, watching. "One ship," a Velhari officer reported. "Minimal weapons. No threat." But Commander Tova didn't relax. Tova had spent the last 12 hours learning about humans, reading reports, watching recordings, understanding, finally, what they had done by taking those children. "It's not here to fight," Tova said. "It's here to watch, to report. More are coming." They came. The second ship arrived 30 minutes later. Then the third. Then the fourth. By the time 4 hours had passed, there were 57 human vessels surrounding the Velhari ship. Big ships and small ships. Military vessels and civilian transports. Ships with weapons and ships that were clearly not designed for combat. They all came anyway. On the bridge of the Velhari ship, the officers watched the sensor readings with growing terror. This wasn't an attack fleet. This was something worse. This was every human who could reach them, coming as fast as they could, caring nothing for organization or strategy. They came because human children were in danger. That was the only thing that mattered. "Commander," the sensor officer said, his voice shaking, "I'm detecting more ships entering the sector. At least 200 more. Some are jumping in from systems we didn't even know humans occupied." 200, Tova repeated. The number seemed unreal. And more coming. Every minute more ships appear. They're not stopping. They're not coordinating. They're just coming. In the cargo bay, the children were still locked down. After the chaos of the uprising, the guards had managed to get control again. The children were back in their cages, though many of the cages were damaged. The lights flickered. The temperature was still wrong. The ship felt sick, but the children didn't care about any of that. They could feel something in the air. A change. A hope. "They're here," Dohan whispered. He didn't know how he knew. He just knew. "The humans are here." Hannah held Taiho close. The little boy had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from his second trip through the ventilation system. He had done more than anyone should ask of a 5-year-old. He was a hero. "Will they fight?" one of the younger children asked. "Will there be a battle?" "I don't know," Hannah said honestly. "But it doesn't matter. Whatever happens, they're here for us. They came for us." At that moment, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A human voice filled the cargo bay. It was coming from everywhere, broadcast on all channels. "Velhari vessel. This is Admiral Jisoo of the Human Coalition Fleet. You have taken our children. You will release them immediately. This is your only warning." The voice was calm, cold. There was no anger in it, no rage. Just absolute certainty. "If our children are harmed in any way, there will be no negotiation. There will be no surrender. We will board your vessel, and we will take back what is ours. Every being who participated in this crime will answer for it. If our children are dead, we will destroy your ship. We will hunt your empire across the galaxy. We will not stop. We will not rest. We will not forgive. You have 1 hour to respond. Choose wisely." The message ended. Silence filled the cargo bay. Then the children started to cheer. On the bridge, Commander Tova faced the worst moment of its life. The screen showed a wall of human ships. The sensors screamed with warnings. The crew looked at their commander with fear and desperation. "What do we do?" the first officer asked. Tova thought about fighting. The Velhari were warriors. They had conquered worlds. They had crushed rebellions. They had never surrendered. But looking at those sensor readings, Tova saw something it had never seen before. An enemy without limits. An enemy that didn't care about winning or losing, about living or dying. An enemy that wanted only one thing: their children. How do you fight something like that? "Lower our shields," Tova said quietly. "Commander?" "Lower our shields. Power down all weapons. Open all channels." "But Commander, we..." "Do it," Tova roared. Then, more quietly, "We lost this battle the moment we touched those children. The only choice now is how many of us die." The first officer hesitated, then obeyed. The Velhari ship's shields went down. Its weapons went cold. On the human ships, sensors registered the change. Tova picked up the communication device with shaking hands. "Human fleet. This is Commander Tova. I am surrendering. The children are alive. They are unharmed. We will bring them to the docking bay immediately. Please, do not fire." The response came after a long, terrible silence. "Your surrender is accepted. If any child is even a bruise, we will know why. Prepare for boarding." In the cargo bay, the guards began unlocking the cages. Their movements were fast and panicked. They couldn't get the children out fast enough. "Everyone up," a guard said. "You're leaving. You're going home." The children didn't cheer this time. They were too tired, too shocked. They had been fighting for a week, and now it was suddenly over. It didn't feel real. Hannah helped Taiho to his feet. The little boy was still half asleep, confused by all the noise. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Home," Hannah said. Tears were running down her face. "We're going home." They were led through the corridors of the Valhari ship. Guards who had been their enemies now cleared the path, pressing against the walls to let them pass. The children walked in a long line, holding hands, supporting each other. At the docking bay, the doors were open. Human ships had connected to the Valhari vessel. Human soldiers were already on board, standing in formation. They wore combat armor and carried weapons, but their faces were not hard. Their faces were gentle, worried, loving. "Children incoming." Someone shouted. And then the soldiers moved, not as warriors, as parents, as aunts and uncles, as people who had traveled across the galaxy because human children were in danger. A soldier scooped up Taiho and held him close. "It's okay, little one. You're safe now. You're safe." Another soldier found Sujin and Minho. "Are you hurt? Are you injured? We have doctors. We have food. We have everything you need." Dohong was approached by a woman with admiral stripes on her armor. Admiral Jisoo, the one who had sent the warning. "You're the leader?" she asked. Duhan nodded. He was too tired for words. Admiral Jisoo put her hand on his shoulder. "You did good, son. You kept them alive. You kept them fighting. The signal that saved you all was sent by a 5-year-old in the ventilation system. Do you know what that means?" "It means we had to," Dohan said. "We're human. We don't give up." The Admiral smiled. It was a sad smile, but also proud. "That's right. We don't give up. We never give up. And we always come for our children." Hana found her mother. Yuna was being led out of a different part of the ship, along with the other adult captives. She was thin and exhausted, but she was alive. When she saw Hannah, she screamed, "Hannah! Hannah!" They ran to each other. They collided in the middle of the docking bay and held on like they would never let go. Yuna was sobbing. Hannah was sobbing. All around them, families were reuniting. Parents finding children. Brothers finding sisters. The sound of crying and laughing and relief filled the air. "I'm sorry," Yuna whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry I couldn't save you." "You did save me," Hana said. "You taught me to be brave. You taught me to fight. You taught me to never give up." That's how we survived. On the bridge of the Valhari ship, Commander Tova watched the humans take back their children. Council Representative Mira stood beside the commander, her many eyes wet with tears of relief. "They all survived," Myra said. "Every single child. It's a miracle." Tova said nothing. The commander's black eyes stared at the screen, watching humans embrace their young. Watching soldiers who could have killed everyone on the ship, instead choosing to comfort frightened children. "I don't understand them," Tova finally said. "They came with warships. They could have destroyed us. But instead they're gentle." "That's what you never understood," Mira said. "The warships weren't about rage or revenge. They were about making sure nothing stopped them from reaching the children. If you had fought, they would have killed every one of you without hesitation. But you didn't fight. You gave the children back. So now they're gentle. And what happens to us now? Myra looked at Tova with something like pity. The humans will hold you for trial. You'll face judgment for kidnapping their children. Some of your crew may spend years in human prisons. Others may be released. It depends on what role they played. And me? You were the commander. You gave the order to capture them. You refused to listen to warnings. Myra paused. But you also surrendered. You kept the children alive. That will matter. Tova closed its eyes. When it spoke again, its voice was very quiet. I didn't think they would come. So many of them. So fast. I thought humans were weak. No, Myra said. Humans aren't weak. They're the opposite of weak. They're so strong that they don't need to prove it to anyone. They don't need to conquer worlds or build empires. They just need to protect their families. And that makes them stronger than any empire. The last human ship detached from the Volhari vessel. It carried the final group of children, along with the most injured adults. Medical teams were already working on them, treating wounds and checking for problems.